Hi everyone, I'm Gavin Lon. Yesterday, I decided to create a kind of low fidelity video to demonstrate getting started using Visual Studio Code and creating and debugging C# applications using Visual Studio Code. So I decided to just jump on the mic, hit the record button, and very spontaneously create this video. This is not the way I usually create my videos. I usually spend a lot more time on production quality, so this is very much an experiment for me. The advantage of this low fidelity type of video is that I'm able to present you with informative content without the time overhead required for more high fidelity video production. So the advantage of this style of video creation is I can get educational content out to you a lot faster. So I'll be able to provide you with a lot more content on this channel. Please let me know in the comments section what you think of this more spontaneous lo-fi style of video creation. And please don't worry if you like the more high quality production videos. I will still, of course, frequently create these types of videos on this channel. To support the channel, please hit the like button and please consider subscribing. And please ring the bell so that you'll be notified of future content. Please feel free to share this video with anyone you feel may benefit from its content. If you're feeling generous and you'd like to buy me a coffee, you can do this at my Buy Me a Coffee webpage at this URL. I love reading your comments, so please feel free to engage with me in the comments section. Right, let's get into this video. Right, so the first thing we're going to do is install Visual Studio Code. We can just simply do a search for Visual Studio Code. Okay. Right, and we got download here. We can just click on downloads option here, and we got all the options here. You can install it on a Mac. This is the great thing about Visual Studio Code. It's cross-platform, so you could install it on your Mac or whatever version of Linux. And of course, you can install it for Windows. So we can go to the Windows version there. Thanks for downloading VS Code for Windows, and it's downloading it. It's going to put it into my downloads folder. Great, off it goes. So then we can just go to the downloads folder and we can click on the executable to install VS Code on the appropriate platform, and you just follow the instructions on the wizard. See, I've got create a desktop icon. I find that can be obviously quite convenient for when you want to launch Visual Studio Code. Anyway, I've actually got Visual Studio Code installed, the latest version of Visual Studio Code installed. So I'm going to abandon this process, but please continue until you've got the latest version of Visual Studio Code installed on your local machine. Great, so then of course we can just launch Visual Studio Code by double-clicking it on our desktops. We're going to create a project from scratch. So I'm going to go to my C drive and just create a root folder for where we're going to store our various projects. So I'm going to call this development. This has already got it, so I'm going to call this I'm just going to call this source, right? And then what we can do is open this directory directly within VS Code. So open folder, and then we go source, our new folder that we just created in the C drive, and we go select folder. For C# applications, we want to ensure that we have the C# dev kit extension installed for VS Code. So to do that, we just simply click on the extensions option here, and then we can do a search for C#. And we've got C# dev kit right here. And you can see I've got the uninstall option available to me here because obviously I've got it installed. But if you see install there, it means you don't have it installed, so you press the button and it automatically installs the C# dev kit extension for you. I would say it's basically essential to install this extension if you want to develop C# applications using VS Code. So make sure the C# dev kit extension is installed. Okay, excellent. So let's go back to our Explorer window here in VS Code. Let's launch the terminal window. So we can do that by going to View, hit Terminal, like that. And you can see that the source folder is now our current directory. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a console application. So in order to do this, we're going to use the .NET command. But we first need to make sure that we have the .NET SDK installed in order to leverage this .NET command. So you can go to Google, put in a search for .NET SDK, right? Download .NET SDK for Visual Studio. So all we do is we click this to install it. We just click this button. It downloads the install executable. Okay, it's taking a bit of time, but we'll get there. To access the executable, you'll see in a bit, we just simply click on the folder icon, go to the folder, and you can see the exe that we've got to double click on to run the install process. So then we just simply double click on it, and we click the install, and you go through the instructions, and it'll install the latest stable release of the .NET SDK. So I'm not going to go through with this. I've actually got, I believe currently what I've got installed is .NET 8 Preview 6 of the .NET SDK. So this will be fine for the demonstration conducted in this video. So you can verify that you've got the .NET SDK installed by running within your terminal window in VS Code. You go .NET -- version, press enter, and of course I put Verion, so that's not going to work. So let's go .NET -- version, and there we go. We've got Preview 6 of .NET 8 installed. Excellent. Now what we can do is create a project using a .NET command using the .NET SDK. So the command we're going to use the console project template to create our project. So we're going to develop a console application in this video, just a very basic console application to give you an idea of how you create a C# application in VS Code using the C# dev kit extension. So here's the command for creating a new project within the source folder. So we're going to create so let's type .NET new console, which is the project template we want to leverage. So it's .NET new console -o. Essentially -o is going to create the necessary extra folders where we want our project files to reside. So we go -o, and then we can say C# project. So it's going to create a C# projects directory within the source folder, and then we want another folder, the employee app folder, like that, and then simply press enter. It's created that successfully for us, so we can actually, within our Explorer window, we can see the various files that it's created, which includes a CS_proj file, which denotes our project, our C# project, our C# console application project. And then we've got the program.cs file, which contains the actual code. So we could actually run that now by typing .NET run, and it's going to output nothing. Because we are not in the correct directory. That's why it's going to output nothing. So if we go cd, and we go C# project, so we have to be in the same directory here. Before we run the .NET run command, we have to be in the same directory as where the CS_proj file for our relevant project resides. So let's navigate to that by going cd C# project employee app, press the enter key, and now we're in the correct current directory, and we can go .NET run, and hello world should be outputted to us. Come on, there you go. So hello world is outputted to us, so we are on the right track. And if we wanted to alter our code, very simple. We go hello C#, for example, here. And then we can save our project by going File, Save, like that. And then we go .NET Run here, and whoops, Donut Run. Clever of me. But okay, so we're going to go .NET Run, not Donut Run, and we've got Hello C#, and that's what we want. So Hello C# is printed to the screen. So everything is in place now. But now, I mean, you could also, for example, create a more sophisticated type of project. So let's say you wanted to create a Blazor server project. It's very simple. So let's actually navigate backwards here. Oops. And clear the screen. So we're in the source directory here. And let's run the command for creating a Blazor server project. We're not going to develop a Blazor server project. I just want to show you how you would create a project based on the Blazor server project template using the .NET SDK in your terminal window within Visual Studio Code. So it's very simple. It's very similar to what we've already done with the console project. So we go .NET, we go New, and we go Blazor Server like this, -O, and then the directory where we want our project to reside. So we're going to create a Blazor Server App project directory. That's where our project files will be generated. So let's hit the Enter key and see what happens. Okay, now if we go here, C# projects, we can see we've got 2 projects. We can see it right within the Explorer window of VS Code. And we've got the Employee App project, which is based on the console project template. And then we've got the Blazor Server project, which is, of course, based on the Blazor Server project template. We've got all the relevant files here. So this is the program file, which is mostly configuration sort of code. You know, use static files, use routing, use Blazor Hub for setting up the Blazor server application. So to make things simple, to get into this, but we can actually run this because it creates a lot of default code for us. So we can actually run this Blazor server application, which has obviously minimal functionality, but it will be enough to show us how to set up a Blazor server project and then run the project. So we can simply go directly to the folder where our Blazor server project is installed. So if we go to source here, C# projects, we go Blazor server, and we directly open that folder, and then we launch the terminal window. Okay. We can now actually just run this project. So if we go .NET Run, see what it does here. Great, so that looks good. So now it's listening at this location, http://localhost port 5271. So if we just copy that into our favorite browser, we can now see our Blazor server app with, this is just default functionality that's been generated for us, but you can see it all in action there. And that's it. You basically created a Blazor server application, and you can just create your code, create your application from there. Brilliant. So you can see you're pretty much unlimited. You can do almost the same things you would do in Visual Studio. You can do now in VS Code. So you can create a multitude of different types of applications. It's really straightforward using the .NET SDK and VS Code. Let's go back. We're going to develop a basic console project application. Let's go directly to the console project app. All we do is we open the folder. Let's go to the app here. We go select folder, open the program.cs file, and we can tap out our code. Awesome. So all we're going to do is create a simple application that accepts 2 inputs from the user. So it's going to be the first name and the last name of an employee, and then it'll basically add it to a list which will be displayed to the user. And the reason we're going to create this application is so that you can see some of the debug features in action. Okay, excellent. So let's get going with this. So I'm going to first create a variable named exit. It's a Boolean variable, and I'm going to initialize it to false. You'll see the meaning of this variable in a bit. And let's create a string variable for the first name, and we'll just initialize that to an empty string. And then we want the last name, and look at it. It's predicted that for us. That's one of the benefits of having the C# dev kit installed. It's predicted what variable we want to add next. So I'm going to just press the tab key. Right, so let's continue. Now we want to create a generic list. So this is going to store the collection of the employee data in a strongly typed list. So let's create a list, a generic list, and we haven't yet got the employee class here, so we can't strongly type it. So let's actually create our class here quickly. And it's very simple. It's just a very simple class. So to create our class, all we do is go class. Whoops. Nope, we don't want to do that. Class employee. Perfect there. And then we open close brackets. And we're just going to go public, right, string, first name. It's predicted that we want to include a first name field. Perfect. So we just press tab and it adds that in for us. And then we can just make a duplicate of that and call this last name. Like that, and we've got our class. So now we can create our list and we can strongly type it. So we create a generic list type, and we put employee within the angle brackets to strongly type our list. Visual Studio Code is outputting a prediction of the line of code that we want to create, and it happens to be correct. So let's just press the tab key, and there it is. That's really convenient. We're going to include a do-while loop that we want to execute infinitely while the exit variable equals to false. So once the exit variable equals to true, we want this do-while loop to be exited. Okay, we've got a lot of predictive stuff coming up there, which is really cool. So we want to clear the screen first. Then we want to write a prompt. Please, so this is going to be outputted to the user. Please press the A key to add an employee, comma, or press any other key to exit the application. Okay. That's as simple as that. And then we want to read whatever the user presses, and we can do that with this line of code. So we go console key equals to read key dot key. And then if the key is the A key, we can write functionality to add the entered first name and last name of the relevant employee to the employees list. So we want console key dot A, like that. So we're checking whether the user has pressed the A key, and if the user has pressed the A key, we're going to put write line like that. So it's just going to write a blank line to the screen. It's just really for formatting. We can just do it like that there with nothing passed in as an argument to the write line method, like that. And then we can write another prompt, and this time we want the user to enter the relevant employee's first name. So we'll go here. Please enter the employee's first name. Like that, put a colon there just for formatting. And then we can read the user's input into memory with this line of code using the readLine method. So it's console.readLine, like this. And can see we're getting some squiggly lines there. We're going to use the double question mark. So if the console.read line is null, we're telling the compiler we're assigning an empty string to the first name variable like this. And then we just want to prompt the user now for the last name value, last name like this. So we go, and then we go var emp equals to, we're going to create a new employee object, and we can do this. We go first name equals to first name and last name equals to last name. So it's predicted that perfect for us. That's exactly the line of code we want. So we now have created an employee object based on the user's input of first name and last name, which is exactly what we want. Right, and then we just simply add it to the employees strongly typed list with this line of code. Brilliant. Okay, so if key equals to A, so if the user's pressed A, we want to add whatever the user inputs as the first name and last name to a list of employees, else we want to set the exit variable to true, which means it'll exit the while loop and the application is terminated, so the application is finished. The user has basically added all the list items and is happy with the display and wants to finish the application, so presses any other key to terminate the application. Brilliant. And that is pretty much the logic for our application. I guess we can just test that now and see what happens. So as we know now, we first have to save the program.cs file, which obviously contains our code. View the terminal window. Okay, and we go .NET run and see what happens. Okay, please press the A key to add an employee or press any other key to exit the application. So let's press the A key. Brilliant. So it's now prompting us for the employee's first name. So I'm just going to put in my own name, Gavin Lon, and then if we press enter, oops. So we're adding it to the list, but we're not displaying it. So we want to display the collection to the user. But we're on the right track here. So let's press Control-C to cancel that, clear the screen. Okay. And now let's create a method that outputs the list of employees to the console window. So I'm going to create a method that doesn't return any value called display employees. Like that. Okay, and then we're just going to do a for each loop that loops through the list of employees. So we want to go employee, right? Predictive code has come up for us and it's absolutely dead on, and that's what we want. So this is really convenient for us. And then we're just going to write it to the screen like this. And we'll just use a write line. So write line basically appends a new line to the end of whichever parameter, whichever argument you're passing to the write line parameter here. We're going to pass in an interpolated string. So employee dot first name and last name. That code will output exactly what we want, which is the first name of the employee followed by the last name of the employee. Okay, so right, then we can just call that method up here. And let's see what the result of that is. Okay, so .NET run A, first name Gavin, last name Lon. There we go. So we got Gavin Lon printed. So we've only got one list item, one employee in our strongly typed employees list. So it's outputting that employee, which is absolutely correct. The details of that employee, Gavin Lon, to the screen. So let's press A again. Let's add a new employee. So let's call this guy Bob Jones. And there we go. We have Gavin Lon and Bob Jones as employees added to our application, added to our employees list. Let's press A again to add another one. So let's go Sally Lane. And Sally's details have now been added to the employees list and output to the screen. So our little application is working pretty well. So let's exit the application by pressing any other key, and there we go. So we've got our application. Our console application is working pretty well. That's great. So now what do we want to do? I want to show you how we can actually replace the class, the user-defined type here, with a record rather. And we're going to do that for a particular reason, and it's to do with comparing equality. So basically, we only want an item added to our employees list if they don't already exist in that list. So if we did a check now to see if that employee exists in that list using the contains method, this would not actually work because this type is a reference type. We need a value type in order to do a direct comparison of values for this purpose. So let's just show firstly how this won't work using as our code is in its current state using a class. But when we use the record type, it will work because it now will behave like a value type rather than a reference type. So firstly, let's enter the incorrect code. So before we add the employee, we want to compare the object to all of the objects currently within the employees list. And to do that, we can use an if statement and the contains method like this. So we go if not employees dot contains emp. So if it doesn't already exist in the list, then only add it. This should work intuitively, or everything looks good, but it won't work because an object derived from a class is a reference type. And when you do a comparison like this on an object, it's not comparing the actual values of the first name and last name to these values in the objects that reside within the list. And that's what we want. So this code here is not going to work as expected. So if we go .NET run, we go A, we go Gavin Lon. It adds Gavin Lon to the list as expected. But now what happens if we add Gavin Lon again? We don't want this item to be added to the list because Gavin Lon already exists in the employees list. So it is adding it, which means it's not working. So how do we get around it? In C#9, the record type was introduced, which means that convenience has been provided through this new record type. So to create a record type, it's actually a lot simpler than to create a class. The code is a lot more concise. You would perhaps want to use the record type if your user-defined type was only ever going to contain data and no behavioral functionality. So to create an employee record type, you can use this code, which as you can see is very simple. And that's it. That's our record. And now, so it's complaining there because the casing is different. So we could just do this to fix this. Just go first name and last name. It actually synthesizes these properties for us behind the scenes. We need to call this a little bit differently. So it's literally like instantiating an employee object and passing the relevant values to the constructor rather than assigning the values to their properties. So to do this, we simply alter the code appropriately like this. And now, let's see how our code behaves now, if it's doing what we want it to do. So let's first clear the screen, .NET run. Okay, press the A key because we want to add a new record, Gavin Lon. Okay, so we've got Gavin Lon. The code is giving us is the output that we would expect. So let's see if we can add Gavin Lon again. So we don't want Gavin Lon added to the list because it already resides within the list. Oh, and it has added it. And the reason is, I didn't save my code. So that's why that's not working. I forgot to save my code. So always remember, once you've made a modification to your code, to save it. Okay. Hopefully that is the reason, or I'm going to look silly. But okay, let's cancel out of that. Let's clear the screen, and let's go .NET run a Gavin Lon. Okay. Let's add another one. And it doesn't add it this time. So our code is working because now our employee type is behaving like a value type and not a reference type. So it compares the actual values of first name and last name to the relevant values of the objects that already reside within the employees list. So that is working perfectly. It won't allow us to add Gavin Lon again to the list, but we can of course add Bob Jones. There he is. And we can of course add Jenny Lane. Can we add Jenny Lane again? Let's see if we can add Jenny Lane again. Jenny Lane. We can't. So our code's working as expected. But the next thing I want to look at is how we can actually debug our code. Okay. So let's cancel out of that there, clear the screen. And let's see if we can debug our code. Right, so how do we debug our code? Well, it's actually very simple. Because we have the C# dev kit extension installed, we can actually just press F5 and it'll run our code for us. And to test that, let's put a breakpoint around this mark here. No, let's put it there. Display employees, just to see that it breaks, that our code is debugging. So if you look here, we can go to this option, run and debug option here, so we can see the locals, watch, and stack trace windows appear in front of us, and we can leverage these windows to assess the state of our application at a given point within the running of our application. So let's see this in action. Let's press the F5 button here to run our code. Okay, so it's coming up with the various options here. Let's select C# within our command palette. Okay, brilliant. And it's going to run our code for us now. And will it hit our breakpoint? Okay, so it's got a problem here because when we're in debug mode, it's using a different window to the actual terminal window that we wanted to use. So we can actually get around this by changing a setting. But you can see that it has gone into debug mode. You can see the locals window, the watch window, and the call stack window here. Okay, so to get past this bug, let's first stop our code from running by clicking that button there. Go back to the terminal window. Okay. And then we can go to the settings here. And we need it to change a particular setting. So just going to search for console like this. This option is only used for the .NET debug configuration type. So we want to configure this differently so that our code will work. So what we need to do is set this option to integrated terminal, and then we can debug our console application. It's got a problem with the reference to console there. So that's it. So now that we've changed that setting, it should work as expected. Let's press F5. There we go. Let's hit our breakpoint. Brilliant. Okay, so now we can just debug it as you would with, say, Visual Studio. So to step over the code, we could press, for example, F10, and it steps over the code. We've stepped over, so we can step through our code as normal now we're in that mode, and we can use these, we can leverage these windows to assess the state of certain variables. We can assess the state of our application by assessing what's displayed to us in these windows, like the locals window and the watch window. And we can set up various things within, say, for example, the watch window. So, for example, in the watch window here, we can assess the state of the exit variable by adding this expression. So we go exit equals to true and see what that does. Let's put another breakpoint here. Let's go Gavin, Lon. Brilliant. You can see here now within the watch window the current state at this line of execution, the current state of the exit variable equaling true is false, because the exit variable equals to false. I mean, you could just monitor the variable by putting in the variable name itself, but I just want to show you how you can actually include expressions, and we can also look at the state of the other variables too. So, right, the state of the first name variable is currently Gavin. So this is how you can use the watch window, and you can see here we've got the state of the variables outputted to us in the locals window here, but you can include actual expressions here within the watch window for more sophisticated assessments of the state of your application at a particular point in the running of your code. Great. And that's pretty much it. That's how you are able to analyze your code as you are debugging and running through it using the locals window, the watch window, and the call stack window. So within the entry point of the application, we're on display employees. Within the actual employees method, which is the item stacked on top of the main method, the entry point, you can actually navigate to where the code is executing within the display employees method here. So we've got the stack displayed to us in this window here, and we've got various status information about our variables. So we can see various information about the state of our application at a given point, at a given line about to be executed within our code. So let's take out that breakpoint and let's press F5 to continue executing our code. We go to terminal, press A like this. We go Gavin, Lon, and it outputs Gavin Lon. But this should give you an idea of how you can actually debug your code. A again, Jenny, Lane. I hope you enjoyed this rather spontaneously created video on how to create and debug C# applications using Visual Studio Code. I hope to see you soon. Thank you and take care.